Dayton, Ohio is the fourth hungriest city in the United States, with over 20% of its residents struggling with food hardship. All across the country, Americans in low and middle income areas are losing smaller, local grocery retailers, replaced by superstores covering, on average, between 5 to 8 neighborhoods instead of just one. This has led to the emergence of food deserts.
The USDA defines food deserts as 33% of the population living within a census tract, living more than 1 mile from a supermarket. It's a combination not only of geographical space, but also of economic problems.
We used to be a very sort of industrialized community, and now most of our major manufacturing and industry is now gone, leaving technically a financial gap for a lot of people.
I can remember in the 70s, you had places like Delco, GM. GM was, of course, is here, but not, it was much bigger and much greater back in the 60s and 70s. Had Frigidaire and NCR, you know, those were huge, and they were major employers here.
With those jobs gone, people are either unemployed or underemployed, and therefore not able to purchase the basic necessities as readily available as they were able to in years past.
Residents of food deserts are likely to have low vehicle access, and means of getting to the nearest grocery stores are limited. Because people living in food deserts lack accessibility to healthy food, they face a number of health issues, most commonly diabetes and obesity. Due to their long shelf life and low cost, canned and processed foods are relied upon, but are often linked to these health issues. Shelley Mills has lived in a food desert her entire life, during which she has dealt with some of these problems.
Growing up, we lived in Northland Village, which is a low-income housing unit. And then, other than that, we lived on the east side of Dayton, and those are prominent areas for food deficiency. If you were lucky enough to have a vehicle to get to the grocery store, it made things easier. But most of the time, you were lucky to be within 3 to 4 miles of a store. So there was the option of taking the RTA, but when I was little, it was 3 kids and a bunch of groceries. So you almost prayed that you could find a ride, because trips to the store walking with a bunch of kids was pretty hard. So once we got there and got to our grocery store, and the things that we struggled with were, we needed to get what was necessity to feed our family. And most of the time it meant the processed box foods, the unhealthy versions, because you can stretch those. Those last a lot longer and feed a lot more. So by the time you bought everything that would last for the week or whatever period of time you were shopping for, there wasn't anything left for vegetables or good produce. Not that there was a whole lot of that at stores around there anyways. There wasn't a whole lot of steak and chicken and turkey and, you know, the good quality foods that you could get. There hardly was ever anything fresh as far as produce goes. I mean, every once in a while you might get a head of lettuce, but there was no bananas and apples and grapes and, you know, fresh carrots, none of that. If it didn't come out of a can, you didn't know that it was a vegetable that existed in our home, basically.
Since post-World War II America, several patterns have developed. The biggest being that food has become increasingly, food retail and production has become concentrated.
Jim Wellman is the head farmer and project leader at the Urban Renewal Farm, or TURF. It's a community farming initiative that sells produce at an affordable price and educates others on how to grow their own food.
With mechanized farming now, one farmer feeds masses. There's been a big change in how food production and distribution is going. It's easier to get a head of cabbage from Lima, Peru, than it is from Lima, Ohio. And as that whole system, if it ever breaks down, and the trucks quit moving, Dayton has enough food to sustain it for about 3 days. And that's sad.
Grocery stores or food marts or quickie marts that are available on the west side of Dayton really have a subpar selection when it comes to food.
Mike Schultz is the executive director at the Mission of Mary Cooperative, which is a nonprofit organization that has urban farms in the East Dayton area. It works to educate the community on issues of healthy food affordability and access.
People can afford to buy Easy Mac really cheap, get a lot of calories, but in terms of getting local produce, the actual cost of food's, a little more expensive than people are used to, and the supply's not there.
Processed foods tend to be digested in a different way in the human body than non-processed foods. So for example, breads, white breads, or carbohydrates that are processed are more quickly digested in the human body, producing spikes in sugar. But it's processed so quickly that it then fades away, and then you have a desire for more food, which leads people to end up eating more food, and that contributes to the development of obesity and diabetes.
Well, even though it costs a little bit more, I try to buy the good stuff first. And what's left over is how I make the meals stretch. The good stuff has to be there or my kids aren't getting the proper nutrition. With my daughter, she's type 2 diabetic, borderline, going to cross over, and it's a major ordeal right now that we keep her as healthy as possible. These processed foods are junk for diabetics. It's junk for anybody really, but kids shouldn't have to grow up just eating hot dogs, bologna, hamburger helper. I mean, it lasts and it's cheap, and that's what 90% of families I know that are struggling buy. But it's junk, it's poison to everybody. My kids would wonder, we get food stamps, why don't we have food? Well, it doesn't last that long. It doesn't stretch as far as they think it stretches.
A question I always have for folks is why in the first time in the U.S. history do we have a scenario where, and not just the U.S. history, the world history, where we have a scenario where the wealthy are healthy and the poor are obese, and the coins flipped.
Grocery stores have an average profit margin of 1 to 2%, so it's important they turn a profit as quickly as possible. Opening a new grocery store anywhere requires a high level of initial investment. Fear of not meeting this investment can be a significant barrier to building a grocery store in a food desert.
People who live in food deserts pay on average somewhere between 35 to 41% more for the same food as a person who lives in a non-food desert. And the reason why is because they don't have supermarkets. That's a critical factor.
We live in a fast-paced society, and so it's very convenient to get your food, whether it's at a fast food restaurant or a grocery store, ready-made meals. That's convenient to a lot of people's schedules.
And everyone has to be somewhere, pick the kids up after school and get them to soccer practice and so forth. And part of that is, to take them through the drive-through and hand them a greasy burger and a bag of fries and wash it down with a liquid fructose and, on they go.
Erica Bruton is the project lead at the Greater Dayton Union Co-op Initiative. Its goal is to open up a full-service grocery store in West Dayton that is owned and operated by the community and is not driven by profit margins.
So I know that the Dayton City Commission has tried on several occasions to get more access, to have grocery stores come in to Dayton and actually thrive in Dayton. And it's been an uphill battle. It's been a no-go.
At this address, the closest store to me now is like 3 miles up the road. It's a Kroger. Other than that, a grocery store, the next closest one would probably be a town away. The low-end grocery stores are in areas that are known for crime. Like our grocery stores close early because they're scared because of the neighborhoods that are near them. It's part of having to go to UDF at midnight when your food stamps come on the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd because your Kroger's doesn't stay open because they're scared they're going to get robbed or God knows what.
A profit margin on a supermarket is 1 to 2%. So supermarkets have a very difficult time staying in business. That's why they're reluctant to move into the food deserts, these areas where you have people with less economic wherewithal. So employment, income is directly related to the existence of food deserts and nutritional problems. What has to happen is there has to be greater economic equality. If there was greater economic equality, then in these areas that are the food deserts of today, if people were making more money, supermarkets would move into those areas.
A couple years ago, I was unable to work. I was unhealthy and struggling with my own issues, and I was getting close to $600-700 a month in food stamps. We didn't have a problem with food then. Not a problem at all. The minute I got a job, that got cut in half. The more I worked to better myself and got a promotion, it just kept getting cut in half and kept getting cut in half. Now I've gotten another promotion, and I'm at the point to where if I make any more money, they're going to take away not only my food stamps, but my medical and every other benefit that I get from them, which doesn't better me. It puts me in the hole. Because where I think I'm going this way, they're just going to knock me right back down. No matter how hard I try to do better, they're taken away at the other end, so I never feel like I'm getting anywhere. Just, you can't ever get ahead, it seems like. No matter how hard you try and how determined you are to get away from being poor and having to live a life of poverty, it's the system's flawed, very flawed.
Those living with food insecurity can find hope in local food movements. In order to bring forth a greater sense of community, there has been an emergence in the urban gardening movement. These local startups are small compared to the big picture, but can grow with help from the community.
We often think in our society today that the prevailing ideology is that marketplaces are natural phenomena, that they are created, they're in nature, and that humans merely operate within them. But the reality is that markets are created by humans. Well, I think we need to rethink the relationship of humans to marketplaces. And doing that, it would allow us then to begin to think about creating garden cities, towns that are more intimately connected to the production of food.
We could lessen the dependency on the grocery stores, and they would be more for staples and things like that, your sugar, flour, and so forth and so on.
Folks who've been in Dayton for most of their lives start to come out of the woodwork and bring their skills and kind of bring back some of the old historic kind of victory garden mentality, but then also the homestead mentality of the 60s, 70s. So I think the community of Dayton for sure will be able to design the city in terms of health of people.
If you choose to take a piece of ground across the street there that's a vacant lot, that taxes hasn't been paid or anything like that, and it's just an eyesore, you go in and start working it and planting and growing some crops, then you approach Dayton and say, look what I'm doing here, and they will work with you.
It's also a matter of informing everybody of all income levels. You really got to put food in your body that's good for you. That's not, not just going on taste or fast,
Teach them not just about gardening, but plants, where their food comes from. So they know, a vegetable comes from soil and it's actually grown.
Carrots come from the ground, not Kroger's. And that green beans don't grow in cans. That they can feed themselves in this area, with a little bit of effort.
We want to have things that are affordable, but also the things that people like and recognize. So we're working on prices as well as providing a well-rounded selection for people.
There's a lot of people gravitating towards the value of, slow food movement making sure it's quality ingredients, the nutritional value versus quick, let's get on the move and just put something in our body. But what we're putting in our body actually matters to our body and the world.
I know I'm really good at growing peppers, hot peppers and things, and turnips and some of those other crops. You know, I just kick ass with it, you know, the turnips and things, man. There's just certain crops that I can really do well. And then you might be able to grow lettuce really well. So if we got different people doing, you know, different niches, we can provide a better selection, a better variety.
Because at the end of the day, although our highest mark isn't about making profit, it's about serving people and making sure people have the basics that they need to survive and thrive in our community, we all need to come together to make sure that this works.
You know, if we're all working, this, you know, Mother Earth is just a big ship. It's a big blue ball and we're shooting through the air and so forth and so on. And if we don't all take care of the ship, we'll all go down together. You know, we need to become a community to sustain a community, to sustain ourselves.